right?
Yes.
Deal?
Boing.
Welcome to the Acquia podcast, Drupal technology, community, and business.
Welcome to the Acquia podcast, Drupal technology, community, and business.
There's a module for that?
Of course there is.
This is the Acquia podcast. They talk about Drupal and stuff.
So this is a bit of an unusual situation for us. We're recording the Acquia podcast today in Acquia headquarters in Burlington, Massachusetts, and we don't usually do this on camera, but we thought it'd be a fun thing to try. I'm with one of my favorite colleagues among all my favorite colleagues. Most people in Drupal are going to know you, but why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Angie Byron, or I also go by WebChick on Drupal.org and other places on the internet. I got started in Drupal back in 2005 as a Google Summer of Code student. And once I found out that anybody could contribute to open source just by trying and having like 45 insane seconds of courage, then I just started to get crazy and get into everything. So I, was contributed module author. I wrote a theme once. I did a lot with the documentation team, the webmasters team, the security team. I got on the core development team, and these days I'm actually a core committer, so I actually help Dries with the management of the Drupal core release cycles and things like that. Yeah, and I general cat herder. I help make sure the community is functioning properly and well, and people are unblocked from achieving awesomeness. And then lately, what I'm doing now is I work at Acquia with Dries in the office of the CTO. And so my job is to make Drupal awesome. So we figure out together, what's the biggest thing holding Drupal back right now, and whatever it is, we just tackle it. It's really fun, and I get to do big impact stuff, and hopefully Drupal's seeing a benefit as a result.
Sounds like a nice job.
It's awesome, yeah.
Okay. So roll it back to 2005. What's your first Drupal memory?
Okay. So my first Drupal memory was I went into the IRC channel in Pound Drupal, and I introduced myself to everyone, and I said, "Hi everybody, my name is Angie, and I'm a new student, and I'm so excited to be here, and I can't wait to work with all of you." And then one of the people in the IRC channel, I was like, "Ah!" And so I kind of hid under a blanket for a few hours. That was my first Drupal memory. Luckily, it went up from there. But,
Okay. I happen to know that you drew a comic strip about that.
I did, yes.
That's still online, right?
Yeah.
I'll link to that in the podcast notes.
Yeah. The good news is that experience actually taught me a lot about the culture of open source and being respectful of people's boundaries, and it also taught me that we need to treat newbies better. And so I spent a lot of time, sort of since then, trying to change the culture of the Drupal community to be a bit more, accepting of people when they make little social foibles like that. So.
So what did you work on in that Summer of Code?
So I wrote the quiz module. It was a project that was decided on by Robert Douglas, who was my Summer of Code mentor, and he used to work at Acquia, and I think he's at Commerce Guys now. And so the idea was a framework for educators or anyone who needed this kind of stuff, game companies, whatever, to be able to write questions that tied into larger quizzes, and you could do things like randomize the questions and answers and things like that. So I was just barely selected for Summer of Code that year. There was actually 2 students on the project, and they decided at the last minute to put 2 of them on there, and that's the only reason I'm in Drupal today. So thank you, Robert Douglas. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll buy him a beer just for that
Awesome.
next time I see him.
Awesome.
What version of Drupal was that?
That was, it was 4.6, and when 4.7 was being actively developed, and so my Summer Code project was actually against 4.7. So I was chasing head as it was moving around, and so literally every day I wouldn't know if my module would work or not because they might have changed something upstream that broke everything. So that was a very exciting time.
Sure, and that's actually the space you live in now.
Correct.
Day to day.
Now I break other people's modules.
So can you compare Drupal now to back then?
Well, it was a lot smaller for one thing. I remember I actually read the entire handbook in one sitting because it was 50 or 75 pages back then, and nowadays it's 13 gazillion pages. I don't even know how big it is. There weren't any books about Drupal back then, so that's a huge improvement from before. There was very few Drupal companies. I remember there was Civic Space, and there was Bright, and there were a couple of other ones, and that were kind of the shepherds. But a lot of us were freelancers or just kind of hobbyists back then. And I think there's been a pretty big shift in the Drupal community where a lot of people actually have Drupal as their day job now. And there's a lot of big companies doing a lot of big, crazy things with Drupal. I think our community is a lot more diverse now than it was back then. I remember there only being a couple of women, for example. I don't remember us ever talking about accessibility or some of these other things, or usability. There was a couple of people who kind of were passionate about that, but it wasn't like a thing. And I think Drupal's really grown up a lot in the past 7 years or 8 years, however long it's been. To the point where we embrace a much wider swath of contributors than we used to. We have a much better onboarding process for people getting started. So it's still a big learning curve, or sometimes I call it a learning cliff, but there's a lot more tools available to help people through that. But one thing that hasn't changed at all, at least from what I've observed, is the spirit of the community. Like, I go to a DrupalCon with 3,000 or 4,000 people now. It's the same as the first DrupalCon I attended that was just like 70 people there. Just people are fun. They really enjoy talking about what gets them fired up and passionate about Drupal, and they're very welcoming to newcomers. So that's one thing that hasn't changed. I'm really happy about that.
One of the changes that I really love from that period, comparing that period to now, is that I had the feeling in those days that you pretty much had to be a hardcore coder to have anything to say or to be useful to anyone in the community. And now we have marketers, lawyers, designers, usability people. Every profession that touches the web is now involved in Drupal as well, and bringing something to it. Whether that's enabling us to work in business contexts, whether that's enabling us to make simpler, more usable applications. I love that diversity of contribution as well that you touched on. Yep,
yeah, for sure. It's it's an amazing community, and we still have some barriers to break down, and we're really good at giving coders like a nice on-ramp of places to go and things to do. We have to work on that a little bit with our more non-technical community members, but definitely the spirit of the community is very opening and engaging. We definitely want to work with all those people. It's just a question of, Drupal is a project that was grown up by developers for developers. And so it's been a bit of a transition trying to broaden that scope a bit. But I totally agree. It's been great to see project managers and, expert designers and, people like that coming into the community and really improving the project.
So this is a great point to say, okay, where are we in the next release cycle? What is the state of Drupal 8 and what can we look forward to?
Sure. So Drupal 8 began development in the beginning of 2011, like March of 2011, right after Drupal 7 came out, more or less. And from then until, I would say, December of last year, so December of 2012, we worked on just putting as many features in as we could possibly put in. And so some of the great features that made it into Drupal 8 are a new configuration management system. So one of the really difficult things in Drupal is when you make a bunch of configuration changes on your development site, trying to get those development sites onto the live site so that they're reflected up there. And there's a bunch of ways that people try and deal with that, but a lot of them are incompatible or incomplete. So we've actually put into Drupal 8 core now a system for that. So that hopefully will address a lot of pain points there. Another thing I'm really excited about is a lot of the authoring experience improvements we've put into Drupal. So one of the things I do here at Acquia is I help manage the Spark team. And Spark is an initiative to basically fix the authoring experience of Drupal. So we've done things like add a WYSIWYG editor to core, add inline editing to core, add a mobile-friendly toolbar to core, some of these other features that sort of really help improve the day-to-day lives of people who have to, sort of victims of Drupal, right? People who didn't get a say in what CMS they use, but this is what you're going to use. So it's trying to make it easier for them to get what they need to do done. So in Drupal 8, we have these initiatives that Dries sort of laid out. So configuration management is one of them. Web services is another one. So we have a native, what's called REST server in core so that you can get information into and out of Drupal for like mobile applications or other Drupal sites or things like that.
But the implication of this is actually fantastic because it allows all of the content management, access, all that stuff that Drupal does really, really well to power mobile applications, to power things that aren't just web pages.
Exactly, yeah. So the idea behind it is write once, publish to any device or any channel, of any kind. Because it could be Twitter or something too.
Sure.
The web services initiative is really exciting. The mobile initiative, if you ever look at Drupal 7 in a skinny device, it's not a very pretty picture because, back in 2008 when we were developing that, mobile was like, oh, that's cool, sci-fi thing, ooh, smartphones. These days it's like, it's ubiquitous, So we had a lot of catch-up work to do there, but we have a bunch of nice improvements there. The admin section's all been redesigned for mobile first, and all the themes that come in core are all responsive, and a bunch of different tools and techniques for that, like a responsive table. So as a developer, you can say, hide these columns when the window gets to this level of stickiness. Sure. HTML5 was another initiative we had, so we converted all of the output in Drupal to a new markup standard, which is much more future-proof and easier to work with, frankly. You don't need div, span for these kinds of things. And part of that, too, is a conversion of everything to Twig, which is a new templating system that's provided by the Symfony framework. We've actually built a lot of the underlying guts of Drupal on Symfony in Drupal 8, and there's really this movement within Drupal to we call it proudly found elsewhere instead of not invented here. So instead of inventing everything ourselves and think we can do it better than everyone else, we've really tried to take a wider view of what other PHP projects are doing, where the web is going in general, and try and pull in things that make sense.
Larry Garfield calls that getting off the island.
Correct, yeah.
And I kind of view it with the perspective that in Drupal we're really good at not reinventing the wheel, really good at improving something rather than writing it again. And we're extending this concept beyond our own boundaries now. Symfony does a great job at a bunch of stuff, gives us a bigger community to work with, more eyes on the code, gives us more security, gives us more smart people helping us improve what we do. And I've been to a few PHP events recently, and the PHP world has its eye on us again because they see us, the Drupal way of doing things in the past. Sometimes they considered it a little quaint, sometimes, maybe outdated. And so getting really modern coding patterns and reusable components is a really exciting thing for the next release.
It's also great because it moves us to object orientation, which is it's a huge, for people who grew up learning PHP on Drupal, and there are a lot of people for whom that's true, I think Drupal 8 will be kind of a big adjustment for them. But for people who were classically trained or have experience in other languages, Drupal 8 is going to make a lot more sense to them than Drupal 7 did. Because we're just falling more in line, like you said, with what the larger people are doing, and I've experienced that as well. That within the broader PHP community, it's like, oh, Drupal, they're playing in our sandbox now. So it's good. It's been good.
Let's see, other initiatives. Internationalization had a big push.
Yeah, so the Multilingual Initiative has been great. They've revamped a whole bunch of stuff in core. So, for example, in Drupal 7, there were sort of two incompatible ways of doing translation. They've narrowed that down to one fully compatible way of doing translation.
One incompatible.
Yeah, one incompatible. No. So now, essentially, we use the entity translation module, which allows you to translate on a per field basis, and that's moved into core now.
Great.
Along with a great UI for setting that all up in a really slick and easy way. We also have it now, so and this will be the biggest immediate change for people who don't have English as their first language, is during the installation. You select the language first before you see installation profile, which is good because I wouldn't want to learn about installation profiles in Hungarian personally. But also when you select the language, it can actually download the translation for you from the installer, so you can actually install from install to finish in your native language. And so that's huge.
That is huge. Yep. Because where I live, the number of times I've had to answer exactly that question. Yes, install it in English, then grab this file and put it in this place. It works, but it's not particularly user friendly. It's not.
Yeah, and we've invented ways around that. Like there's a multilingual installation profile, but then you have to download this huge thing with all the languages you don't care about just to get the one that you do. So So this is really slick.
That's a huge step forward.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just built right into core. They've done a lot of other things too for streamlining stuff. By the end, what they're hoping to do is essentially alleviate the need for the IE10N module and the title module or page title module, and a few, like in Drupal 7, you need like 70 modules or something to make multilingual sites. We're trying to get that down to 3.
For a given value of 70,
you
need a lot of modules.
Yeah, a lot of modules. I know I'm missing an initiative. Oh, views in core. That was another huge initiative. So we took the views module, put it into core, which sounds like a pretty easy initiative, right? It's like copy, paste, done. But what was great about that...
But how many lines of code is the views module?
It's a lot, but, CK editor's a lot of lines of code too, so what are you going to do? You got to measure your framework on how effective it is, and,
We're going to win on size of download.
Yes, right. No, but what was great about the Views in Core initiative is as they moved Views into Core, they converted it to all these new APIs that we had invented sort of in the ether. Like, oh, we hope this configuration system is going to be awesome for people. And oh, we hope the plugin system is going to be great for people. But Views actually allowed us to battle harden these APIs before they get into contrib, which was invaluable. And it means that now with Drupal 8, right out of the box, you can actually start building sites, which was never really the case in earlier versions. Like, yeah, core can do basic things, but then you always have to use, 5 or 6 contrib modules to get even a basic site running. In Drupal 8, it's really all there.
Sure, in Drupal 5 days, that meant views panel CCK, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
the layout initiative is another one of their initiatives. That one, though, I don't think is going to ultimately deliver us panels in core. That was sort of what their goal was. What they're doing instead, though, is they're trying to create the APIs to manage layouts and displays in core, so that what we don't have in Drupal 8 is 3 or 4 different completely incompatible ways of managing that. So, for example, in Drupal 7, there's the context module, there's panels, there's display suite, and a few other ones, and then you have to sort of pick your poison.
Right.
And then if you pick this route, then these other routes are shut off to you, and you have to hope that the modules that you choose are compatible with that. So in Drupal 8, that situation should hopefully be better, because it means that, we're going to have one layout mechanism that all of these modules can use, and then you can kind of pick your flavor of what works best for your site.
Okay. That sounds like progress.
Yep.
Did we get all the initiatives?
I think so. Scotch, whiskey, CMI, multilingual, views, HTML5 and mobile, and Spark.
And layouts.
Yeah, that's Scotch.
Oh, Scotch, okay. What is Drupal?
Oh, jeez. Drupal is 3 things to me. It's a content management system, so you can use it to build any kind of website or web-related thingy you can think of. It's also a content framework, so it's something that you can use to extend in any way that you can imagine. So if you decide you don't really want users on your site, you want everyone to authenticate by, their eye scan or something like that, Drupal's got hooks. You can go in there and you can extend it to make it do what you want. And then the third thing it is it's this amazing community. It's an international community of thousands of people who, are funny and passionate and just giving, and they love what they do, and it's just really exciting to work with them every day and see the cool things that they innovate and come up with.
Great answer. So how do you describe what you do to other people?
So it depends on their level of technical ability. To the customs officers, I say I work with computers, and so that's about as far as we go with it.
Oh, that's good. I have to remember that one.
Yeah.
I work with computers.
Yeah, and then if they ask, what do you do, then I usually say, well, I'm, a web developer, which is actually not even remotely true. So sorry, U.S. Customs, don't mean to lie to you. But, so what I explain to people is that, if I'm explaining to my mom, I sometimes shorthanded as like, I'm the vice president of Drupal. It's just like a really shorthand way of, it's not true, but, it sort of gets across the idea. But what I usually tell them is that, I'm sort of, a leader in this huge open source community, that essentially is there to help empower other people to do amazing things. So, I really like to see myself as sort of behind the scenes, and also in front of the scenes, but a lot behind the scenes, just sort of like talking to people and finding out what they're passionate about. And hey, you should talk to this person. They're also passionate about that, and making connections that way, finding out what's holding people back, and seeing if there's solvable problems we can do something about, or if, a lot of times if someone's really frustrated, a lot of times all that is they just really want to help and they don't know how. So showing them the pathways on how to do that is oftentimes really, really helpful. So I really try to be an empowerer of other people in my role.
That's one of the things that I really value in the Drupal community as well. If you help someone, if you unblock someone, if you make a connection, you are helping, thousands, tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of people, because all of these little changes we do have these huge, they build up to bigger changes, or they have this ripple effect. And the fact that we're so empowered to make a difference in the world is the most incredible feeling.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's like you fix a bug, and you're fixing it for hundreds of thousands of people, and including really big, important organizations out there like ACLU, EFF, some of these, things that actually change the world. So, it's a really, really empowering thing, and really, fantastic way to just contribute to the larger world and make it a better place.
What's the best Drupal module you ever used?
the best module I ever used is probably the upgrade status module. This module is awesome. You basically install it on your Drupal 6 site or Drupal 7 site or whatever, and it goes through and it tells you what the modules are that are compatible with the next version of Drupal, so you can time when you should do your upgrades. And when you do your upgrades, it actually has a nice little step-through thing that says, first, you should back up your files, then you should do this, then you should do this, and actually steps you through the entire process, which really makes really kind of difficult core, upgrades a lot more easy and less, manageable and stuff like that. So that would be one of my favorite modules of all time.
Great choice. Thank you so much for your time, Angie.
No problem.
It's great to talk with you.
Great to talk to you, Jim.
Drupal, 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 Drupal.
There's a module for that?
Of course there is.
Like this is one. That's smaller on the front, bigger on the top.
Oh, okay.
You want to put that on the podcast.